Welcome back to Cobb's Corner. I'm Morgan Cobbs, and Black Adam opened the DCEU to a different kind of superhero who will stop at nothing to defeat evil. He's more shoot first, ask questions later, if you will. Black Adam introduced us to the Justice Society, as well as the fictional country of Kahndaq, and gave us The Rock's DCEU debut as Teth Adam, aka Black Adam. Let's go to Cobb's Corner. So, Black Adam is a superhero who is woken up after a 5,000 year slumber. Like his superhero counterpart Shazam, he has to say the acronym Shazam in order to activate his his powers. Namely, Black Adam has the stamina of Shu, the swiftness of Haru, I think that's how you pronounce that, or Oros, the strength of Amun, the wisdom of Zehuti, the power of Aton, and the courage of Mehen, all of which are Egyptian deities. Egyptologists who are listening, please feel free to correct my pronunciations of any of these Egyptian deities. If I have mispronounced any of them, I apologize. Please feel free to correct my pronunciation in the comments down below. This is in contrast to how Shazam gets all of his powers from Greek deities. Um, Off the top of my head, I don't know exactly what the deities that Shazam gets his powers from, but when Shazam when Shazam 2 comes out, or if I ever review the first Shazam on this podcast, then I'll definitely go through that acronym. But Shazam. This film, does have a lot of like backstory. I mean, it starts off with 5,000 years ago, the country of Kahndaq, Kahndaq, this great city state before Rome, before Egypt, before Babylon. There was Kahndaq, and there's a lot of like back and forth throughout the film in terms of like backstory, and then fast forward to the 21st century. Like that's at the beginning of the film, but then in the second act we revisit the past. I think like in the second act we revisit the past, and then maybe also in the third act, or not in the third act, but maybe I think at the end of the second act, like a few more times throughout the film, we go back to that exposition scene in the beginning, and we see more. We see more of it, more of the backstory, and it sort of provides more context to the character of Black Adam, and then also as a way of like catching us up to where we are in the story. So it's it's relevant to where the plot is at that particular time. So it's like once you watch the film, you realize why there's so much back and forth, which is not even that much. It's like three different exposition scenes. It's unlike how in Black Panther, where we start the film with an exposition scene, and then fast forward to 2016, and then in the second act they go back to that exposition scene to provide more context to the story. So Black Adam, there's a lot of exposition to provide context, but it's not just once, it's like two or three times. So a lot of back and forth, all with a purpose, though. Introduction of the Justice Society was awesome. Diehard DC fans would know that in the comics, the Justice Society of America predates the Justice League of America. Like the Justice Society showed up like back in like the 1930s or 40s. And I guess quick sidebar, Black Adam initially wasn't even a DC property. He was owned by some other comic book company that was then bought out by Detective Comics, and which DC stands for Detective Comics. And the Justice Society, like they were, I guess similar to the Justice League of America, but like on a smaller scale. And we haven't seen them in the DCEU just yet. Before this movie, we hadn't seen them in the DC extended universe. The way that they were introduced in this film, phenomenal. Can't wait to see more of them. And they're not the only federation of superheroes that's out there. The DCEU version of the Justice Society includes Hawkman, Atom Smasher, Doctor Fate, and Cyclone. Acting performances of all the heroes was really on point, especially Pierce Brosnan as Doctor Fate. Pierce Brosnan, he, I'm not exactly sure which number James Bond actor. Like, I know he's not the first James Bond actor. I know that was Sean Connery, and I know he was right before Daniel. Daniel Craig. Daniel Craig was 2006 and after. And I want to say Pierce Brosnan. He played James Bond in GoldenEye, GoldenEye, Tomorrow Never Dies, Die Another Day, and then maybe one other. Living Daylights. I think. But yeah, Pierce Brosnan. He played James Bond back in like the 90s. So GoldenEye is the only 007 film that I've seen bits and pieces of that film from the Pierce Brosnan era, but him as Dr. Fate, amazing. It almost rivals Benedict Cumberbatch's Doctor Strange. Uh, Phenomenal, outstanding performance from Pierce Brosnan, and phenomenal performance by Aldous Hodge as Hawkman. I don't think that he was really doing like a Black Panther impression or anything, but Aldous Hodge as Hawkman, amazing performance, just him as an actor, and the sort of banter between Hawkman and Atom Smasher provided excellent comic relief, and the back and forth between like Hawkman and Black Adam. I don't want to reveal too much. This is a non-spoiler review, but that the Rock's portrayal of Black Adam, phenomenal. And also, he's a man out of time. He doesn't know what a catchphrase is. Like, this man's been asleep for 5,000 years and he's just thrown into the 21st century. Probably doesn't even know what a gun is, doesn't know like what a mirror is. Like, they had to explain to him what a catchphrase was. So the whole like man out of time, man out of time's gag was pretty fun comic relief for the movie. The film even left us with something to look forward to in the DCU, with a post-credit scene leaving us on the edge of our seats. I'm not going to reveal anything about the post-credit scene. but yeah, this movie was solid entry in the DCEU. DC's making a comeback. They've made a comeback, I think, over the last like 2 years. They had a shaky start with films like Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, so the original Suicide Squad. My opinion, like all three of those films are probably some of the worst DCU films, especially Batman v Superman. That film was just no. But in recent years, I think 2020, Wonder Woman 1984, fun movie. I liked it. I actually watched it the day it came out on Christmas 2020. Watched it on HBO Max. Liked it. Solid movie. Not as good as the first one. The Zack Snyder's Justice League, phenomenal. The Suicide. Okay, well, it was 4 hours long. The Zack Snyder's Justice League, but I still think it was a phenomenal movie. Did a really really great job. And then later that year, we got The Suicide Squad, directed by James Gunn. Phenomenal. Had to watch it twice on HBO Max before they pulled it, because it was like in theaters and on HBO Max for 30 days. Phenomenal. Peacemaker, the series. All I'm gonna say about that. and Black Adam was really great. I think a lot of times, well, overall, I give this movie about like a 7 out of 10. Solid film. Solid entry in the DCEU. One of their better films in recent years. some movies rely too much on the star power of having a bunch of A-list stars in a movie, and they completely neglect the film's story, plot, pacing, dialogue, everything that makes a film great and enjoyable to watch. Prime examples of this are movies like The Interview and The Hateful Eight. I'll start with The Interview. The Interview is a film that, like, I remember when it came out in 2014, and it was overshadowed by the controversy of North Korea hacking into Sony and pretty much like demanding that Sony like not release the film or whatever. And it led to a limited theatrical release. It wasn't released in that many movie theaters. It pretty much went straight to streaming. And the film itself really wasn't that good. I mean, it's like, okay, so you have Seth Rogen and James Franco, and yeah, they did Pineapple Express, and yeah, they might have done like a few other movies. They're kind of a dynamic duo in Hollywood, but you can't just put Seth Rogen and James Franco in front of a camera and say, "Oh, the movie's going to write itself." It really did not. Like it just didn't write itself. And the film. I think in that film there's a point where like social satire just kind of goes a little overboard. I think that's what happened with The Interview, and they again relying too heavily on the chemistry that Seth Rogen and James Franco have as writers, as actors. Especially Seth Rogen. And they're two great actors, but I just think that that movie was really just a waste of their star power. And The Hateful Eight. Now, I don't. Now the Hateful Eight, which is Quentin Tarantino's eighth film, and Tarantino, one of my favorite directors, like he does have a tendency to recycle cast members, and I feel like half the main cast of that film was recycled from other Tarantino projects. Samuel L. Jackson, that was his sixth Tarantino film. He's been in 2/3 of this man's entire filmography. Tarantino's made 9 films. Samuel L. Jackson is in 6 of them, including The Hateful Eight. Kurt Russell, that was Kurt Russell's second Tarantino film. He was in Death Proof before then. Michael Madsen, his third. Tim Roth, third. So Zoe Bell shows up in that film as well. So he just relied too heavily on the star power. I think it's a movie that you're invested in where the plot is going. You're invested in where it's going. I will say that the dialogue in The Hateful Eight was actually pretty solid. The rising action, the suspense, but it was all build up and then zero payoff in the end. So it was partially like negligence on behalf of Tarantino and him sort of just playing on those same defaults that worked in his first 7 films, and then in The Hateful Eight, it just didn't. It just didn't work out. They relied too heavily on the star power, and that was a worry that I think a lot of us had going into Black Adam. To bring it all back to Black Adam. A lot of us were worried. It's like, oh, it's just another paycheck for The Rock. Like, oh, it's it's got The Rock, therefore it's gonna be a big blockbuster. Therefore, people are gonna go see it. And The Rock showed up for this role. Like, The Rock showed up and showed out for the role. To move. This is a movie this is his dream role. It's a project that he has really been pushing for, I heard, like 15 years, like since 2007. Like he's really been pushing for a solo Black Adam film. So this is really his dream role. He showed up. This is probably some of his best acting like ever. So The Rock showed up, showed out, and the studio, they did not rely too heavily on his star power. I do think that Jean Colette Serra, the director of this film, and Warner Bros. Studios, they definitely kind of did their thing as director and as the studio to did everything in their power to make it a great film, and it was. And The Rock only added to their plan of making it a great film. It was a great film because of The Rock's commanding presence as Black Adam, in addition to solid story, solid script, nice comic relief. Like it just did everything that a superhero film is supposed to do. The overall impact that this film has had on the DCEU at large, without getting into spoilers, is the introduction of the Justice Society and a new location, the fictional nation of Kahndaq. Now, we now know that there is a superhero who's just as powerful as like Superman or Shazam, who's a bit of an anti-hero. Like Black Adam was originally supposed to show up in 2019's Shazam, but then he was given his own film. Hooray. And initially in the comics, Black Adam was the villain to Shazam. He was a Shazam villain initially, but in recent years he's been reimagined as this sort of anti-hero. I think that they definitely did the right thing by giving Black Adam his own film. I'm looking forward to potentially seeing Shazam and Black Adam team up / face off, maybe in the next Shazam movie, maybe in I forget exactly what the subtitle is, but Shazam 2 that's set to hit theaters next year. So maybe Black Adam will show up there. Maybe they will meet eventually. So I'm interested to see where they go with Black Adam in future projects. Not just because I'm a huge fan of The Rock and I want to see The Rock as Black Adam again, but because I genuinely think that he's an interesting character who's he's a very interesting character who throughout the comics he's been portrayed as a villain. He's also been portrayed as an anti-hero. And I'm just interested to see where they go with this very complex character. And throughout the film, they even provide more context to him as a character. So, huge fan of The Rock, huge fan of this character. Loved this movie. Let me know your thoughts on this film, and please, no spoilers in the comments, guys. Please, no spoilers. I also forgot to mention that as of the recording of this podcast, this movie is the #1 movie in the world right now. So this movie, if you haven't had a chance to see it, go see it. I highly recommend that you see it in theaters if you can. Do not wait to see it on streaming. I mean, once it's available to stream, I will do an in-depth spoiler review for this film. But while it's still in theaters, go see it. I saw it in IMAX. Had an amazing time. So if you can see it in theaters, go do it. If you can see it in IMAX, even better. It's the #1 movie in the world right now. Let me know what you guys thought about this film. For those of you who have seen it, again, no spoilers in the comments, please and thank you. You can submit a voice memo or hit me up on Instagram or TikTok with your thoughts on this film, any suggestions on any future films that I should review. Also, join the Discord chat. I recently just started a Discord specifically for Cobbs Corner, specifically for this podcast. That's just going to be a community for all of us to just kind of come together and talk about our different film theories, and where you guys will be able to literally talk directly to me about the different films and the TV shows and your thoughts, that sort of thing. And I definitely want to create a community around this podcast, and like not just Cobb's Corner, but other podcasts that talk about TV and that talk about movies and TV shows. So definitely join the Cobb's Corner Discord. All those links are in the show notes below. Be sure to tune in next week, where I will be reviewing Captain Marvel. Yep, my review of Captain Marvel. We are almost done with the Infinity Saga rewatch series. I know. It has been a very, very, very long rewatch series, and I'll be reviewing Captain Marvel. We're almost at the end, guys. We're almost there. So, be sure to, as always, turn on those post notifications wherever you're listening from, because I post a brand new episode every Friday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, and you don't want to miss out. I hope that you guys enjoyed today's episode, enjoyed your stay here at Cobbs Corner, and I'll talk to all of you in the next episode. Peace.